All right. I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka Some Gadget Guy, the SGG of this terribly named podcast series, but the QA is the important part. SGGQA obviously stands for question and answer, as we like to make this an interactive conversation, like to sort out our feels from the last week of tech news. It's why I like to hold my podcast on a Monday. And then maybe there's been some breaking news. Maybe literally one Mr. John Gao just shared a link in our chat that we'll also add to the show notes and we'll talk about today. But this is also a special day because this is the first SGGQA podcast of 2026. I gave myself permission to take last Monday off because it was literally a day of travel and coordination. It was kind of a last minute affair getting myself out to CES and hooking up with tech outlets and some of my best friends and some of the folks that were making big announcements on the CES 2026 show floor. I was discombobulated enough that I figured, hey, you know what? Let's not do a crazy hotel stream knowing that I'm going to be a bit all over the place. And especially for some of the announcements that we had, it meant that I was able to catch something that I thought was pretty cool. Already seeing a phenomenal list of names here in the chat. I see Bradley Larcher, Simon Says Hypno, Mr. Maug, Control Alt Clay. We got Abhishek. We got Jimmy Fire Dragon, Simon Says Hypno, David Locke, Vonnegut Rosewater. We got Ron. John Gao dropped that link in the private Discord. I think we got a good crew. I think we're gonna have some fun today. Because I want to take some time during the podcast to kind of recap some of my experiences from CES. I have a proper video, and then I did a bunch of shorts, and it was an interesting affair. This is my first CES for a while. Like, I've taken numerous years off to the point where I was, it was my first day out on the show floor, and I started having folks like seek me out. Like a couple pals of mine, like I ran into Adam Dowd, I ran into Enabang Etta, and all of them started just saying like, "Hey, I just bumped into TK, and TK's telling everybody that you're here." So it was like I was a Bigfoot sighting. It's just like I guess I've developed a reputation that I don't do CES when really it's just beginning of the year. I'm looking for work. I'm trying to pay bills. I'm trying to get the mortgage covered, and it's just happened over the last, especially the last 3 years. A project would come up, I would stay in town instead of going to Vegas. Like, hey, it'd be nice to meet up with my friends, but I'd like to make this mortgage payment. Maybe I should just stick around. And it just lined up that travel was covered, and I was able to make this week's show. I do have a project. I actually am booked on a job, but the dates got nudged, so I was like, hey, even better. This I mean, it's like a sign from the universe. I can make it out there. So this week's podcast, none of the videos I was really working on. This is where it's kind of difficult to kind of detail how these types of events can happen. I want to throw a shout out. I want to throw a thank you to the folks over at Qualcomm. I kind of came to them late and said, hey, if you're doing some of that influencer travel or something like that, I'd love to be on the list. I especially want to check out. It was a priority for me to catch anything that was Snapdragon X related. For anything that's laptop, I kind of figured that they'd be talking about a new chip at CES based on all the leaks and rumors that we saw on their product lineup. And they were able to not only include me in all of that, but they covered my travel and my hotel. So my coverage in part brought to you by Qualcomm, but it wasn't like Qualcomm was paying for every one of those little shorts and the videos that I actually put together. It's a weird way to kind of detail. Like I'm a very strong believer in we should be disclosing I mean, not only just per FTC regulations, but we should be disclosing better how we monetize and how we produce our coverage. right? So like if an iPhone gets a positive review, I feel it should be a part of our review to say this is the most popular phone that's going to get the most search engine traffic, and I'm going to make the most money on covering Apple. So take that into consideration as I share my earnestly held beliefs on how great this phone is. So, to that same token, I like to put my money where my mouth is. The folks at Qualcomm did me a solid. I don't know that I would have been able to stay as long or cover as much or get as in depth as I was able to without their assistance. So, I have to send a huge thank you. The folks at Qualcomm really helped out, and I guess we could say that my coverage in part was sponsored by Qualcomm. I need a better like language. Like the video you're watching wasn't paid for by Qualcomm, but probably wouldn't have existed if I hadn't traveled to Las Vegas on Qualcomm's corporate credit card. So that's pretty great. But we've got a lot to dig into. Oh man, I'm already getting questions and stuff. Simon says Hypno is setting up a OnePlus Watch 3. Oh, Vonnegut Rosewater is still talking about Pluribus. We had like a little mention of like in the pre-shows. Who's watching Pluribus? And I really have enjoyed watching Pluribus. For Mr. Mag, you were like Bruce Wayne when he finally came out of Wayne Manor in The Dark Knight Rises. Yeah, only instead of a busted spine. No, actually, in Dark Knight Rises, doesn't he have like busted knees? Because that's me right now. Bradley Larcher, did you get to meet up with TK? We did get one. So TK like packs his CES. He was like running around like crazy. He was taking meetings. There are some of these like shows within shows, like these little media and influencer events. He wasn't able to attend those because he was genuinely like running around to a whole bunch of other stuff. But we did get like one evening. We went to, was it Taco Cel Gordo? This little taqueria, and it's on the strip. It's this little taqueria, and it's great. Like it's one of my comfort food haunts whenever I'm in Vegas. And we like had one evening just to like shove some tacos into our face, and we got a chance to catch up, and we got a chance to chat. Now, and I need everybody in this chat to hold us to account. In the past, we have seen each other more at media events than we've seen each other in person in Southern California. Now, we don't live close. We do live like if I were to get into a car right now and try to drive to TK's place, it would take me 45 minutes to an hour. And that's like accounting for traffic right now. It would still be a while for me to get out there. But now I've seen him in Vegas once in the new year. I need to see him more in person here in Southern California than the next time I go to like New York or India and see him overseas. So that's my goal. My goal is to spend way more time in person with one of my best friends because we live adjacent to the same city. From Vonnegut Rosewater. We're going to talk about some of my experiences at CES. Did you see the Clicks communicator dummy unit? I absolutely did. Um, from ER 1980, was there any mention of Android OS for PC laptop from Qualcomm? Qualcomm did not have much additional partner information on products. The launch at CES was to focus on a very specific sector of laptop hardware, and the primary partner for that is Microsoft. But these little bits that we can glean from other comments from other manufacturers and from other developers that I'm hoping will see that that evolve, like the idea of Android powering more devices. From Mr. Maug, the X2 series seems exciting, but I hate how every video about it was just about synthetic benchmarks. I appreciate that Intel showed off gaming benchmarks instead of synthetic. So, um, you're absolutely correct. This is the same place that we were in the for the initial Snapdragon X launch. I got to go down to San Diego. Qualcomm paid for a train so I could take a train down to San Diego. Um, the early chatter, the first looks, a lot of the data that Qualcomm has is on units they've made. So you'll see in a lot of those videos, we're looking at these like really sleek red laptops, and those are the systems that they've been dogfooding. So they've got these crazy like employee analytics. Like I'm grossly misquoting here. I'm kind of spitballing off of memory, but it's something like on Qualcomm campus, the main infrastructure throughout Qualcomm on employee issued laptops. I want to say it was something like 25% ARM to the 75% legacy machines. I definitely have those numbers incorrect, like not exact. But that's how they're generating this data on a lot of these synthetic benchmarks, these software compatibility, Windows emulation, boot up times, battery life. It's it is testing in a way that doesn't necessarily resemble a consumer facing laptop use, but it's also augmented by real world data from their employees and their engineers and their developers who are using both of these systems out in the wild. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of that just from my experiences chatting. But right now, the data they're getting on ARM is really compelling. Now we need to see what happens when we make a laptop around the second generation chip. How does it perform? What does it really feel like? And, what does it resemble if we compare that against like an M series chip? And knowing that Qualcomm is still probably a step behind what Apple is doing. Apple was so far ahead, like they haven't even really nudged out the next M series, right? We're kind of in a holding pattern. We know Apple's holding back until they see what the next chip is going to resemble. Um, and also from ER 1980, did you see anyone carrying the Xiaomi 17 Ultra at CES? So I got to meet up with some of the crew from Average Dad Tech, and we were at this little media event called Showstoppers. It's kind of a show within the show at CES, and I was so stoked. I mean, I've seen some of the videos, and I kind of waved and noticed as they walked by. I'm embarrassed. I hadn't been subscribed to their channel, but walked right up, had a little crew around him, like introduced. We like shared handshakes, got to chatting a little bit, and they saw I was trying to shoot a video on my Vivo X300 Pro, and immediately like, well, I've got the 17 Ultra Leica edition. So I did see one. I did see one person who was fronting hard. I think TK had the 17 Ultra, but I don't think he was really using it. I think he was leaning harder on Vivo and Honor, and especially for Honor because he was using that as also part of a review. Like he was really going hands on and trying to push that Honor so that he could share. Like again, you're in Vegas. It's a great place to test camera performance. There was some representation. There was some Xiaomi representation, and it's always just nice. I saw so many people from all over the world where it's like, oh, that's a Huawei. And that's not like media. That guy's an exhibitor and he's using a Huawei. Oh, that person's using an Oppo. I saw lots of Oppo. It was just really cool. Like anytime you get to go to one of these and you see people from other countries coming in, and that's just their normal phone. Excuse me. Here in the United States, if I hold up like a Poco, I'm a freak anomaly. I'm looking around, Southern California. No one's sporting Vivos, Pocos. It was cute though. So I'm flying out of Burbank. This is a CES story here. Another I feel like this podcast is going to be rich with anecdotes. Um, I'm flying out of Burbank, and my ticket, my main phone, the phone that I actually used as my personal device and my production device was the Vivo X300 Pro. And I'm going through the security checkpoint, and they ask for my boarding pass, and I hold up my phone, and like he takes a scan, and just as I'm putting it away, he goes, "Oh, hey, whoa, whoa, hold on." And TSA guy is like suddenly very interested about the device that I'm trying to put back in my pocket. And he stops me. He was like, "Well, that's not a Sam. Is that a OnePlus?" Like you could actually hear him working through like the different phones that he has seen. I was like, "Oh, actually no, it's a Vivo." He goes, "A Vivo. Okay." And he actually knew what that was. And we had this delightful little like while I'm waiting to go through the security, get my bag scanned and all that. For the next like 3 people that he's checking IDs, he's barely looking at them, and he's chatting me up about, "Yeah, and I heard this, and I heard like the Oppo Find and this and that and this camera and like, so what's going on? Why is that like such a big circle?" And it was really, really cute. Every now and then you just meet another crazy gadget nerd who's actually like paying attention to stuff, and it just kind of took me by surprise to hit that at a CES. Not a CES, at a TSA checkpoint. So I don't know. I told the guy who I was and the kind of work that I do. So TSA guy, if you happen to catch this live stream, I very much enjoyed our conversation while I was waiting to get my bag scanned. So JGJ, any Linux or FOSS stuff under the radar at CES? Another, so not an anecdote. I posted this on the private chat on the Patreon. The nerdiest pre-brief. So you go to a show like CES and there are like media days and then the show floor opens, and actually by the time the show floor is done with its main first day, CES is kind of done for a lot of news outlets. They go early, they get hands-on, they get pre-briefed. Things like I'm going to do some housekeeping still. I know this is all rambling and preamble and stuff. But some of the stuff that I published was announcements for CES that I got to go hands on before CES, like the gimbal review that I did, the Poco review that I did. Those were pre briefs. So at the show floor, a smaller company that I'm a big fan of that makes a line of products that have been covered consistently on my channel are going to make something new, and to JGJ's point, Linux adjacent, but I can't tell you any more than that. This is the, and again, I don't think this is a product that's going to explode and take over every conversation and get all kinds of huge media attention. But when I am allowed to talk about it, this is one of those Juan excited products that I'm going to glow on because I think the work the company is doing is really cool, and it's work that this company has never done before. And again, like JGJ is saying, it is adjacent. It is in some way tangentially related to talking about open source software and Linux. And I think it's going to be really neat. It makes me sad that I think in our current focus of consumer electronics, that because this is a company that doesn't have like a multi-billion-dollar a year marketing budget, that a lot of people won't find it when it really could be a thing that I think a lot of people would like. It was one of the coolest and the nerdiest hands-on I got, even above the Clicks communicator. I'm putting it in that category for the die-hard, hardcore. I do things on my phone and tablet and laptop. I'm not an average consumer kind of nerd. For me, it was an announcement that was up there at that level. So stay tuned. I believe in a week or two I'll be able to say more. It kills me. It's one of those that like at the show, this thing was like I was having so much fun chatting with the company and the representatives and like going hands on with it and shooting video, and I like walked out of there like, man, this is one of those I really wish I could just break that news right now. But yeah, it's you'll see. It is something, and JGJ, I think you'll dig what they're doing too. So I do want to knock out a little housekeeping. It's been 2 weeks, and I've gotten a lot of stuff published. I'm not going to go through everything. You know what I think I'm going to do? I think I'm going to put together one main blog post and just link to all of the shorts that I shot on the show floor. Um, or maybe I'll just do that on the Patreon, just as like a list. Uh, I I really made an effort because in years past I would do like a daily vlog and just kind of shoot video throughout my day and stitch it together. And sometimes it'd be like a cute little 2-minute video. Sometimes it would be like a 12-minute. I did all this stuff during the day, but none of those as traditional videos ever performed very well. And right now, we know Google is like, if you're not going to make a 20-minute video with tons of product placement and ads built in and affiliate marketing and shop links and all that nonsense, then they only seem to care about shorts. So I kind of cross-pollinated. I tried to post everything to Instagram and to YouTube, and the numbers on Instagram were kind of crap, but the numbers on YouTube were surprisingly decent for show floor coverage. And again, this is coming from I haven't been to a CES in years. This is probably one of the more successful CESs just in terms of viewership that I've had in a while. So I think I'll do like one more CES list post so people can have those links, and then I'll kind of move on. I'll kind of move on from there. But let me get this out of the way. Let me screen share here. My computer is just going really slow. I definitely need to do like a rebuild. So the day after, we talked about this last podcast 2 weeks ago, but I did finish up a best mobile games of 2025 video, just kind of talking about what I felt were some of the best games of the year released for Android. And of course, my list is very heavy on premium titles, console, and PC ports. So this was available on the Patreon in preview in early access, but then I published it for New Year's, so that is now live. Then a biggie for me, I got to go long-term test driving the Odyssey Maxwell 2. And this is one that I think is always kind of frustrating because this is a refresh on one of the best gaming headsets ever made. This is one of those gaming headsets. It's in a tier where I would consider it starter audiophile. Like the 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 quality of playback and representation and space for a closed back headphone is A-list. It's A tier. And there are a handful of really expensive premium gaming headsets that I think fit that rarefied level. And Maxwell 2 is a polish on the Maxwell 1. It's really smaller quality of life improvements, some subtle tweaks and changes to the tuning and the EQ, and then some improvements to things like the microphone, though I don't feel like that's still like I feel like that's still one of the sticky bits on the Mac. So I have the microphone test in there, and you can hear that too. So immediately, I of course get nothing but nitpicking comments from gaming headset nerds. Oh, well, it doesn't have active noise cancellation, and they still haven't brought back the simultaneous wireless listening. So this is like a non-starter. This is like not worth it. I was excited to see that the folks at Odyssey actually did break news on my video in the comments. I had one of the first videos published on Maxwell 2, and they left a comment saying, "Oh, and later in 2026 we are releasing an Odyssey Maxwell 2 with active noise cancellation." So now you'll have a wide variety. You have Maxwell 1, you have Maxwell 2 as a refresh, and then if you want to spend a little bit more, you'll have Maxwell 2 with ANC. I feel like having the choice is a good thing. If you want to spend a little less and you know you're mostly going to game at home in your living room, like you just need passive noise rejection, then it doesn't make sense to spend more on a Maxwell 2 ANC. And I seriously don't feel like Maxwell 2 ANC is going to be the same kind of portable headphone that we would expect from like a Sony XM, right? Those are collapsible, small, plastic, lightweight, fit in your bag. That's a very different mobile kind of product than a big metallic, planar magnetic, closed back headphone. So I always just think it's kind of funny because like those kinds of aficionados just can't help themselves. It's like I saw a video about this and I didn't even watch the video to listen to this guy. I just think it's garbage and it's too expensive. And you're like, all right, you're wrong, but okay. From Mr. Maug, I really wish the Maxwell 2 came out a smidge earlier because I caved in on my Astro A50X mainly because they're orange. But the Astros are good. I don't know. Are we not digging the Astros? I thought the Astro A50s were pretty solid. So anyway, again, it's not to ever say like I think there's a best. There is something I very much appreciate about what planers do. Planers. I originally saw the word PLANAR in a in relation to plantar fasciitis. So in my brain and in my mouth, that's what I say first. And then you'll have, it's not even pronounced planner, it's pronounced planer, like a plane. Like, cool. Unless you're talking about your feet. And I know you're not, but you can at least appreciate, like, that's how I saw and heard the word first. All right, cool. But no, I thought that was pretty good. From H2O Taku, I've been listening to more videos about AI-induced psychosis, and now I think I need to be even more careful about what tasks I trust with AI. Instead of telling me what I actually need to solve the issue, it just told me that any solution I tried to come up with was brilliant, the hallucinations are crazy, it gaslighted me about microphones. We're going to talk a little bit about AI too, because AI was big in the media coverage, but it honestly wasn't difficult to evade AI on the show floor. So anyway, let me wrap up some housekeeping here. We'll get back and cover some news, and then we'll talk about CES and AI. So one of the major announcements, again, thank you to Qualcomm for sending me out to CES, the Snapdragon X2 Plus reveal at CES 2026. So we got news on the Snapdragon X2 Elite and X2 Elite Extreme, which I can't say I love Qualcomm's naming convention on their chips. I think they keep getting out of order. Like, for example, we have the Snapdragon X Elite. We have the Snapdragon 8 Elite, and then we have the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5. What happened to the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gens 2 through 4? Blah? Which again, now the Snapdragon 8 Elite is technically the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 4. At least that's what I'm going to start calling it, just so this stuff makes a little bit more sense in my brain. So at the end of last year, we got word on the Snapdragon X2 Elite and Elite Extreme. And now so now partners are starting to build laptops around those chips. We got some hands-on with HPs, Lenovo's, and Asus. And the Asus were the ones that really impressed me. I felt like Asus took the job seriously on the first generation of Snapdragon chips, and now they're doubling down. What they put into that thin, super light, executive style X2 Elite Extreme is pretty remarkable. And that's going to be a wildly expensive laptop, like even more than what I spent on my 64 gig Surface 7. That Asus is probably going to end up being a $3,500 machine. So, so while we're starting to see the actual hardware, the consumer-facing products with the X2 Elite, we also got the announcement on the X2 Plus. So a 10-core CPU variant and a 6-core CPU variant, and roughly about half the GPU compute of the Elites, which, considering the improvements from X to X2, the GPU in the 10-core X2 Plus should easily rival the X Elite that I have in my Surface 7. If I'm just doing a little back of the napkin math, that's actually a pretty good jump. What if you had a mainstream priced machine, something that would compete against a 5 series chip from AMD or Intel, right? Like if the Elite is a Core i7 and the Elite Extreme is a Core i9, then the X2 Plus is supposed to be something in that Core i5 mid price but still premium, that nicer end of the market. Of course, you're going to have every single comment come out, oh, but I don't even understand why you would do this. Now you don't have software compatibility and you can't game. And they're not designed to be gaming machines, and you must have ignored all of the incredible improvements that we've gotten to software compatibility. This is the mainstream part. Again, it's like we focus in on one chip and then we say, oh, but this one chip can't do that. And it's like, but it wasn't designed to do that. It was designed to do these other things, is designed to go head to head against like a Companion in that, in those Chromebooks. It was designed to go against the lower tier Intel parts or medium tier Intel and AMD parts. Oh, but you can't even like game, you can't even run any software on it. All right. So keep being an Intel shill. I do not understand. Panther Lake looks cool. Panther Lake looks like Intel has appropriately changed course, is focusing on a different idea of efficiency. They're getting their x86 stack cleaned up. They're making their chips the most like an ARM SoC that they ever have. The reason why you have improvements to x86 in laptops is because Apple scared them with ARM chips. And it's taken them roughly 4 years to figure out how to make their x86 chips more like ARM chips. And now they're getting better at it. But I still very much doubt that we're going to see an oranges to oranges improvement where performance per watt is suddenly better than ARM. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Intel's efficiency and the way that they can scale down their standby times, all of those things will greatly improve the laptop experience. And then the second you use that chip, I think it's still going to slide, and I think it's still going to struggle to keep pace with the Snapdragon X2s and the Apple M series, especially the M4s. So, that was a lot of rambling. X2 Plus looks like it's going to be a solid performer. We need to see. We need to see because I feel like I got to be really careful here. I feel like Dell had at least the right analyst commentary from the show floor. The major manufacturers, and especially the major data broker companies, really big on AI. Everything was AI in the media presentation of CES. And then you just got these little like one-off interviews and these little side comments, like a VP at Dell coming out and saying, hey, like we're checking out all these things, these new AI PCs, Windows Copilot, and we don't think any of our customers are buying these machines because of any of that stuff at all. And it was just so refreshing because like anyone who's in my chat right now, because you're cleverer than the average bear and you're not just a slob that just follows whatever marketing trend is being fed to you right now. I think anyone in my chat would have said, yeah, that makes sense. I think people would care more about performance and battery life. I guess all of the advertising about AI on a Windows machine just isn't really getting it done. And that's the thing that's still bumming me out is when software compatibility is as good as it is, emulation has gotten fantastic. If you're not hardcore gamer bro, there's nothing these machines can't tackle. I had my Surface 7 in my hotel room, and I think I used it on a quarter of the videos that I produced just because I was in my hotel room so infrequently. 3/4 of the videos that I put up, like all these little shorts and stuff, I did directly from the phone. I did directly from the phone that shot the video because guess what? ARM chip real fast at editing video. The Vivo battery real good because big and fast charge. But when I would get to my hotel room and I would dump a whole bunch of footage, it wasn't like the Surface 7 let me down because the GPU isn't as good as like an AMD APU GPU. So there you can't even use it for nothing. Just like this is so dumb. So anyway, we got to see what the price points arrive at. I just got um I just got a mini PC and it's called a Max and it's a respectably powerful older AMD chip. Um, but what would have normally been like a year ago, a configuration on this machine at the price the machine is going to cost would have come with 32 or 64 gigs of RAM. And they just sent me this box with 16. So here's the big problem that these X2 Plus chips and Panther Lake and whatever AMD is going to come out to answer Panther Lake. A lot of folks are going to look at the mid-ranger parts and say, but that's not good enough. They're too expensive. They need to be cheaper. it would have been better if of cheaper OF, not VE. Except for the fact that like no manufacturer can account for how much every component is going to cost. If it's the SSD, if it's the RAM, we're even starting to see some kind of constrainment on these other like bits and pieces, like the side parts, the Wi-Fi cards that are going into these things. We're starting to see this entire industry struggle. And so what would have normally been a decently specced out machine at $799, I think unfortunately is going to price creep up to $999. And we're still going to be playing this BS game of, is 16 gig gonna be enough for Windows? When Windows is trying to force as much language model as they can. And when you're using language models on a computer, you need a lot more RAM. You can't get by with 8 gigs. You know, like what would make Chrome struggle is an order of magnitude thirstier when you start using language models. So I feel the presentation of this matters a lot. It was so refreshing to have Dell come out and say, yeah, the people who are using these and liking these aren't talking about AI. And the people who are concerned about buying a new PC right now are concerned about AI. None of our data, internal, seems to suggest that consumers are motivated to spend money on these computers having more AI. Now, if we could get ahead of that, while we're also talking about like prices are going to climb because AI is eating all your RAM, then I think these have a fairer shot in the market. But unfortunately, even from the techie perspective, like the folks who consider themselves knowledgeable because they watch tech videos from people who really only test x86 CPUs and kind of shrug off ARM whenever it enters the conversation, they're the ones that are kind of the loudest right now. They're the ones that are leaving the most comments. Oh, you can't even use no software. And it's like, I don't know what to tell you. It's not like I'm held back at all. I think I'm doing pretty good. So I guess like what you buy, but I'm not going to sit here and argue with you because you're that grossly uninformed. Moving right along. We did get this video out. I was stoked to go hands-on with the Hohem iSteady MT3 Pro gimbal. It's a gimbal with AI. I know y'all are super excited about all the AI, but this is the good kind of AI because it's machine learning on device with a little camera sensor that can track people's faces, and you can use it to stick to subjects. So you hook up your camera, in my case, a Lumix, a little mirrorless camera, and then you give it a little OK sign and it tracks your face, or you can use a wireless remote to have it track another object or subject. Just a wild piece of prosumer. It kind of blurs over from prosumer to professional camera equipment. And then lastly, like I said, I have a video recap from the show floor. I found this cute little spot on a balcony over Central Hall, and I just kind of rambled out some of my experiences like I've been rambling on this podcast. But if you want the slightly more edited version of my experience on the show floor, then this is the video that you should watch there. And believe it or not, now that it's 9:40 in the AM, that wraps us up on housekeeping. Let me take a quick drink of coffee here. Okay, we got a few here from I got a couple comments here that I just want to touch on, but come on, browser, what are you doing? No, come on. This is great podcasting right now. From Future It's Here, I think Qualcomm has an uphill battle with Intel this year, but man, I can't wait for your take on Moto. So I think the uphill battle, I bet you, so this is my prediction. I bet you Intel is probably going to take CPU performance when power is not an issue. You plug in your laptop, you've got it connected to the wall, it's getting all the electricity it needs. I think it's probably going to take the CPU wins. I think AMD likely will take some multi-core wins, and in this next cycle will probably take integrated graphics. So GPU wins. I think Intel and AMD are going to battle it out pretty hardcore. I think it's going to be a fun fight. But again, plugged into a wall and telling your computer go into the high performance mode and use as much electricity as your circuits can soak up, I think AMD will probably eke out GPU wins. But the second you unplug from the wall, I think you're going to get the best balance of performance per watt with ARM. I just don't see, even in the big bar graphs, the big numbers, oh, we did all these gaming benchmarks on Panther Lake. Isn't this so exciting? I haven't seen from either company what they're really doing to scale using your laptop on just battery power. Like, I'm editing video at the gate at an airport, and this thing is going for hours. And I've never had that experience on an Intel machine. I've always had to plug in, not only just because the battery is tanking, but because I know my timeline is going to be a stuttery mess. I know it's definitely not going to be able to render. But the video, my CES recap, I edited that on my Surface 7 at the gate at the airport. I had an hour to kill. I had a coffee and just cut that video up. And the Surface 7 is kind of pokey at DaVinci Resolve. And I still think it would have been a better experience than if I had to go and hunt for an outlet to power an Intel system instead. So that to me is kind of my breakup. I feel like that's what this year is going to look like. And yeah, I think it's fine to seed the outright gaming win, because if you want the outright gaming win, you should go with like a Gigabyte. Another refreshing announcement from the show floor this year was Gigabyte saying, hey, it doesn't make sense for us to keep spreading out all these different laptop models. We know what our customers come to us for. They want high performance gaming systems. So we're going to make a system that maybe gets in 90 minutes on battery, but it's, the top of the line, most powerful CPU, most powerful GPU that we can pack into some kind of shell as a desktop replacement, portable desktop that we can. So if you want that, that's what you should go for. If you're a hardcore gamer, bro, why are we pretending that integrated graphics are going to make anybody happy, right? Yeah, you might get like 10% here or 5% there, but if I go back to 12th gen Intel, I can still play a lot of games. I can go to an AMD 7000 series laptop chip. I can still play a ton of games. And my Snapdragon X, not X2, but the first generation Snapdragon X Elite, can hang with and beat 12th gen Intel, and it's right in line with like AMD 7000 series. Or what was the 6800M? That GPU? That's fine. Like, that's pretty good. From Vonnegut Rosewater, I feel like Unihertz saw the announcement about the Clicks phone because they responded quite rapidly with renders of their own much more modern, sleek looking device. Um, oh man, see, like, I started this podcast and immediately we've got like some roof repair going. So apologies if you start hearing like hammering or drilling or anything like that. It's gonna distract me, so you'll hear me get all stuttery just anytime it happens. Um, One of the things that I really liked about going hands-on with the Clicks, one, they've addressed my biggest issue with the accessories, where they've never made a case for a phone I actually used, and a case can be too bulky and too difficult. Like, there are times I want the case on and times I don't want the case on, or times a case will get in the way of other things that I might want to do with that phone. And the communicator, the power keyboard, much better solution. But if the communicator takes off, and I've got a pre-order in, so it's definitely, it has to be a successful product because I want to buy one. Um, it's never been true. I put my money on so many things that the rest of the public decides to ignore. Um, it actually can only have a positive impact on the niche of people who have been grossly underserved, a communicator phone. The absolute best communicator phone that has been made to date is the BlackBerry Key 2, in the most modern sense. The classic era of BlackBerry focused on efficiency, focused on minimizing how much data you use. excuse me, maximizing battery life, having a great keyboard, that classic era of BlackBerry. Those were the best communicators that we had ever seen. And so if the clicks takes off, I think that can only it's like a rising tide lifts all boats. I think that can only bring more light to this niche because traditional marketing can't work for a niche product. But how do you find the consumers who are on iPhones or Galaxies or Pixels who might actually prefer the experience on a streamlined device, a lower power, maximum battery life, communication focused first kind of experience? I think there are a lot of people out there that fit that like a glove. But they think they need, oh, well, if I want to have the bestest camera and I need this and I need an iPhone and I need to do prologue in RAW and shoot cameras. Then they get the phone and it's like they basically just scroll TikTok on it, right? So if this brings some more chatter, some more conversation, just kind of reinvigorates the nerdiness of those of us who review the gadgets and the kind of experiences that we appreciate, I think it could be a boon to Unihertz to also get out there and talk and like, hey, we make these kinds of phones, and maybe this could also be a benefit to like if the Clicks communicator is doing this with software support, maybe we should match it. Those little nuances matter where I feel like we keep missing part of what made BlackBerry so good wasn't just the keyboard, but it was also the software experience, the organization, the battery life. All of those things kind of go hand in hand in hand. And so I have very high hopes that Clicks can make a good showing, get a few nerds talking about it, sharing that with their family and friends. I think Marie is going to jump on one. So after I'm done reviewing the Clicks communicator, I think it might end up being her phone. So she'll finally be looking to drop her Pixel 8. And if she goes back to a phone with a keyboard, she had the BlackBerry Key 1 and she liked that a lot. Unfortunately, the screen fell out of that BlackBerry Key 1. It was not put together very well. So I feel like she might be game to give that idea a try again on a Clicks communicator. From Chris Pollard, I'm curious to see if Intel actually comes out swinging this year, but I'm still Team Red until I see a reason to switch. Panther Lake, they were saying all the right things. I need to see those machines not in keynote bar graphs, but in like the hands of someone like Notebook Check. I need to see what real world software does, and I need to see it properly delineated. That I need to see an Intel system on battery performing those same tasks that I run all the time from my Surface 7. From Mr. Maug, I'm excited for Panther Lake in a handheld. Only Intel is providing ML upscaling for smaller form factors. AMD is just releasing the same chips. I know FSR support has been continuously updated, but to that same point, it's not been as improved. Um, I just feel like AMD has been so much more consistent in representing consoles. It makes sense to me why AMD is far and away kind of dominated that portable space. Intel really struggled with the performance per watt to try and get that. What was it? The MSI Claw, I think, had an Intel chip in there. Was it a 200 series? I can't remember. So that performance per watt, that improvement, that scaling, that kind of control, all of that just seemed to be more robust on AMD, and AMD had a lot more experience with consoles. Intel making some inroads there is massive improvement. I think it's going to be the three horse race again once we see Steam's VR headset come out. When the Steam frame arrives, that's going to be a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. It's going to be an ARM chip. And I bet you those kinds of PC emulated experiences through Linux on frame are going to do a decent job of competing against some of the x86 portable devices, especially if you can try to maximize battery life. If you let one of these newer chips just go all out, like whatever the newest APU is, I can't remember, Z2 Extreme. I can't remember what AMD's APUs are called. It's very similar to the 8945HS that I have in my Steam box, my little project mini PC. That performance is excellent, but the power draw is pretty extreme. So again, I feel like ARM has an opportunity to come in and say, hey, you've been using ARM chips in Nintendo. Now here's ARM chip for PC gaming. And same thing. I bet you can get faster frame rates on Intel. But if you match at like 60 frames per second in this game, you'll get like 30% more battery life on ARM. I'm willing to speculate that when we really kind of compare similar like for like, that again, I bet x86 loses that fight to ARM, no matter if it's Intel or AMD. And also from Chris Pollard, the Qualcomm stuff intrigues me, but I'm still a bit skeptical on how it will integrate in office use. I don't want to introduce any unnecessary quirks that I'll need to support. And lots of people complain about software support. No one gets very specific. And again, I mean, especially like if you're on the Patreon, if you tell me like, hey, I'm really curious, how does this app perform on a Snapdragon X? I've installed software. I did a whole thing on Autodesk, just showing what Autodesk was like, because someone asked like, hey, will this run even under emulation? Will this run on your X Elite? So anytime people get specific, it seems they don't know what's currently supported, and what they were worried about seems to be supported just fine. For me, one of the biggies was VPNs. There are no VPNs for Windows on ARM. And before the X Elite had come out, when we were still on the Snapdragon 8CX Gen 3, I had VPNs. So they were correct in that if you had a corporate VPN and your IT department hadn't made that compatible with an ARM chip, a Windows on ARM machine, that was accurate. But there was this like drumbeat. Like someone said it once in a video, probably like a Gamer's Nexus or something, or Wendell. Wendell loves like, oh, but you don't even have this on there. And you're like, yeah, Wendell, actually you do. But I had VPN support, and I could link it with my Surfshark account, and I could, you know, VPN away. Like it wasn't a thing. But even before X Elite came out, that was like the gotcha. You don't even have VPNs. But we do. I mean, now it's like they just announced proper support for Fortnite. So if you need to build and Fortnite dance in your video gaming, that's supported on X chips now, Snapdragon X. Like the concerns that we have is an ever receding slice of support. If you care about audio, the bleeding edge of Windows audio is going to be on Windows on ARM. The first folks who are going to get updated ASIO drivers, low latency, that kind of support for USB devices, it's going to be the ARM machines first. We have proper support now. Focusrite came out with drivers. I think Motu has drivers. Cubase is now supported. All of the x86 software that I use, I have an old version of SoundForge that runs better on my X Elite than it does on my Threadripper. It's emulated. It's emulated x86, and it still outperforms my older Threadripper. So like, where you might be stuck, I mean, again, if you have crazy old legacy software, totally get it. It might not work. If you have corporate custom code that your IT department has deployed that is unique to your company and they haven't made an ARM version, might not work. If it depends on libraries or drivers or something that haven't been updated for X Elite, totally understand. But this notion that like, it's still this popular notion like nothing works, when really it's not only been working great, but it significantly outperforms any of the Intel machines that I've used when I'm on battery. So I've not been bothered. I edit in DaVinci Resolve. I use GIMP for making thumbnails. I edit my photos in an older version of Affinity because I don't like what they're doing with the new version of Affinity. Like, I haven't really been held back. Aw, I'm way behind on the chat. Jason T. Lewis just popping in to say hello, my man. What's up, Jason? Hope you're doing well. Um, a couple other comments here. Scoop just jumped in. One. I gotta say, Scoop. Um, oh man, a couple people like talking about mesh networks. Uh, from Rob Aarons, not Robberuns. Good time for me to log on. Juan, do you feel the power keyboard will work well on devices with big camera islands, Vivo, Oppo, Xiaomi, etc.? The magnets connected to my OnePlus 15 were strong enough for me to decently shake that OnePlus 15. I feel it's gonna be top heavy, so it makes the device really long. So I've got my Vivo, and then you've got this keyboard that sticks out the bottom here, and you're going to hold it from that. I think the magnets are going to do fine in portrait when you're, sort of bracing all the weight against that back area. As long as you've got a really strong magnet case on there, I think it's going to do great. It will be really silly top heavy though. So as you're moving this, kind of back and forth, and as you type, it won't have the same kind of balance or ergonomics as like a BlackBerry Key 2, one of the newer Unihertz, the communicator. What might work better though is if you flip it into landscape orientation, and then the weight of the phone is kind of spread out laterally, and you're holding on to the bottom there. Often described, like, hey, it reminds us of the LG Wing ergonomics. That to me worked really well. You you have the whole weight of the phone laterally, but you're holding on to with both thumbs, and you're typing with both thumbs, and it's not tipping the phone back, it's kind of spreading it out sideways. So I think phones with bigger cameras you'll probably appreciate that landscape. And then when you type in landscape, you don't have that stupid, I hate what Android does, where you start typing and the whole keyboard takes the entire width of the phone, and all you get is like this teeny little strip at the top of the screen to type, because the keyboard takes up so much room laterally. You hook up a keyboard, you don't have that problem anymore. Hook up a hardware keyboard, you don't have that problem anymore. Um, Vasico's talking about the BlackBerry Priv. That was a fun slider phone too. Again, I feel like it was just a little too tall. The Priv would have been amazing if we'd gotten a Priv 2 with the Snapdragon 820. The problem with the Priv was that Snapdragon, terrible Snapdragon chip, Snapdragon 810, just was way too hot. Um, terrible experience. So I'm trying to catch up with the chat, and my browser is literally like locking the scroll down, so I can't catch up. This is hilarious. From Mr. Maug, there's a video comparing a Panther Lake plugged in and unplugged, but it's in gaming. Um, link me the video. I just kind of want to see anything that starts to come out. If folks have actually gotten to do real world testing on it, not just Intel said we could run Cyberpunk under these settings, and here it is plugged in and unplugged, and isn't it the same? Um, like I said, I still expect CPU and GPU on Panther Lake will probably beat X2 Elite, but I'm still very skeptical that it's going to be an oranges to oranges win for Intel when you unplug those machines. So that's the issue. Okay, let me knock out a couple of these news articles. Oh shoot, John Gao just shared something, and I want to get it. So hold on one second. I'm going to see if I can get in. And we can talk about some other stuff while things slowly load. See, like, I don't get what's going on with Restream and then with my browser. So I like open a new tab and Restream freaks out, but I'm doing this through OBS, and my OBS looks pristine. It's so frustrating having to like handle all of this while I'm actively in the process of trying to host a show. From Scoop, I would love to try Windows on ARM for my photo workflow. Again, with a decent amount of RAM, you get one of these machines with like 32 gig. I think it would do you really well, especially like when you're out at a shoot, like you're near the ring in one of your wrestling setups, and you could edit immediately on battery life right from there. I think you would dig that a lot. Um, Come on, open the page. You can do it. Come on, Discord, you can do it. Put a little power to it. Not a little, just a lot. I'm doing softball chants now in the middle of my podcast. This is great. All right, we're gonna have to save the late breaking news. I'm gonna wait until we get through some of these others because I'm gonna have to go like click by click. I did want to highlight this one. A couple folks shared this both on the private Patreon chat and on the private Discord. Written up by Joseph Humphrey. This is from last week. Exclusive Google VP confirms ChromeOS isn't going anywhere, and neither is 10-year support. So point blank, this vice president at Google was asked about the Google graveyard, and quote, I've seen some speculation in the press around us giving up on Chromebooks, and that is so far from the case. I know that there have been memes around Google's commitments to products in the past. That is not the case here. We've got millions and millions of students, of consumers, of employees at work who are heavily reliant upon what we've done with Chromebooks, and so continuity of experience and devices, not to mention business continuity, is really important. And I'm honestly not too surprised that the conversation would kind of focus. I worry that Google is so intent on artificial divisions between different products. That's my big concern. Google is going to try to do the same thing that every computer manufacturer wants, where this is a phone and it only does phone things, and your tablet does tablet things, and your laptop does laptop things, and that's different from your desktop, which does desktop things. When really we've reached a point where, in terms of compute performance, they're kind of equal across the board. A consumer facing laptop versus a consumer facing premium smartphone are a lot closer than people realize. So, our initial hopes, when we started to see this news that Chrome OS is ditching its older kernel, its more Linux foundation, and they're going to go with more of an Android backbone for that experience. My hope was, if we can bring more of the Chrome OS experience to phones and tablets, that makes our phones and tablets better computers. And we've seen a little of that. Like the Pixel now has a desktop mode. The newest version of Dex is built more on the foundation of Android's built-in desktop mode than all the custom work that Samsung used to have to do. And so that's good, that's positive. But I worry that Google is going to take some of that, like they've tested some of it, they've sort of polished some of the experience, and now they're going to go right back to hard divisions. If this computer calls itself a Chromebook, then you get these experiences. But then if this computer calls itself a tablet, oh, well, those are different. And see, like, I've got a OnePlus pad in front of me that's more powerful than most Chromebooks out there. So why can't I experience a more Chromebook-like computing environment? I've got a phone here that's as powerful or more powerful than most Chromebooks out there. Why can't I experience more of a Chrome OS experience from my phone? Especially if I could plug my phone into another monitor or another display, keyboard and mouse. Why can't I open that up? And I think it's still this entrenched idea that well, we could sell a consumer one computer, but wouldn't it be better if every consumer had like 4 computers? And that's what I think is going to be really frustrating. So I'm glad that just because the backbone of Chrome OS is switching to Android, my early fear was, what if they change, well, this is now technically Android, we don't have to hold to the same support commitments, this is different. Now it's based on manufacturers. So if the manufacturer doesn't offer up 10 years of support, well, that's not Google's fault. Google says you should support the Chromebook for up to 10 years, but now the support's in their hands because it's an Android device. So if that's the relationship they have and Google can mandate, these are the hardware configs we support, this is how we'll push out support directly, and then we can still guarantee there will be up to 10 years of support for a Chromebook, that's great. But now I'm a little worried that we're not going to see that same cross pollination. We're not going to see the same improvements from Chrome OS making their way to Android tablets and smartphones. That to me is really the bummer of this, is that they're going to hold to these really strict product divisions. From Future, it's here. Didn't reports say that Google say what Huawei did with Harmony and they're using it as an inspiration for aluminum. I don't know if that was ever confirmed, but Google is also facing, I didn't put this in the show notes. I'll try and find the link. Maybe I'll add it to the show notes later. Google is also facing some interesting market pressure in Mexico. So AOSP is going to go to bi-yearly updates instead of quarterly updates. Another frustrating aspect of Google having this much control over the Android open source project. So now, whenever they commit data to AOSP, it's only going to happen twice a year instead of 4 times a year, excuse me, giving Samsung and Google phones a radical advantage in what the future of Android is going to be, the support for Android, and everyone else has to kind of catch up after the fact. To me, this is an anti-competitive business practice. This is an anti-competition move, but because of legislation in Mexico, Google can't put pressure on other manufacturers like they used to. So it used to be, let's say you were a phone manufacturer and you wanted to release a full Google product suite, all of the Google apps, all of the Google services, Google Play, everything. Google could say, if you deliver a phone with all of our tastiest stuff on it, you can't also make a side or a fork of Android. And Mexico is another country that's looking at interrupting Google's influence over manufacturers. So we should see more products, more custom ROMs. We should see more of that kind of peripheral support. And especially if these devices go to Mexico and can arrive unlocked, we should get a better look at what's powering, what drivers, what support, how Qualcomm supplies, information to these manufacturers. That should actually help improve some of the work that's being done. That's super, super nerdy stuff. I don't think it's going to have a direct consumer facing benefit immediately, but there is potential there. Like, we could use that to piggyback and see what else can we do with these products. Where else can we improve? I think it's really cool when you see some of these custom ROM projects, supporting crazy old phones. Like, if you need to keep a OnePlus 3T in operation, you can keep loading up newer builds of Android. It's very impressive. I want to see something more current than a OnePlus 3T. So I'm sure Huawei took some of those initial steps. Like, we can take some of this Android idea, we can make sure the software, we can make sure the frameworks are in place so that developers don't need to change their apps radically. If you make an app for Android, you should very easily be able to bring it over to Harmony. Things like that I think have helped. Unfortunately, I think the things that are going to do the most benefit, are going to make the most benefit, are these regulatory actions. Preventing Google from locking out parts of the ecosystem or parts of the developer chain will provide even more benefit to what we're talking about here. All right, let me Get that out of the way. Oh, Ted says, welcome back from CES. And Team Vry's in the chat. What up, Team Vry? So I did want to cover this briefly because, like I said, I'm a big ARM compute guy. I think the future of anything portable and consumer facing is probably going to be ARM. And I think one of the companies that best examples of that is Nintendo. Anyone who says ARM isn't good for gaming has to ignore that the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2 are two of the most accessible and most popular gaming products ever sold in the history of gaming. Okay, so this one written up by Kyle Orland over at Ars Technica. Seasonal Switch 2 sales show significant slowing as annual cycle sunsets. So I'm not going to spoil this whole article. It is extremely well cited and sourced. I mean, in the first paragraph alone, there are 5 links to analysts and to shipping and to metrics on the Switch 2. But the long and short of it, especially when we break down per region, I think this headline is kind of it's a little misleading, but I also think it's kind of funny what our expectations are. The Switch has been around for so long, the hype for the Switch 2 was so high. I don't know that anything would have satisfied. I've been very skeptical on Switch 2. I have a Steam Deck. I'm really looking at going pretty much all in PC gaming. And when I've been trying to play with things a bit more mobile outside of my Steam Deck, man, phones have been getting it done big time. In fact, phones are now starting to rival what I can do on my Steam Deck. So me putting down my Steam Deck is not encouraging me to pick up a Nintendo Switch. It's actually like, well, what else could I maybe do with one of these phones instead? But even being a little skeptical on Nintendo's launch strategy, I haven't been particularly impressed with the games at launch. And I've been really disappointed in their strategy on some games for Switch get updates and better graphics for Switch 2, and this costs more. And it's exactly what I avoid by being a PC gamer. By being a PC gamer, as any computer gets more powerful, even older games I can just run at higher graphics settings than I could when the game was new. As the game ages, it gets better. For Nintendo, if you buy an old game and you get a new console, you need to kind of buy a new version of the game. I'm not a big fan of that. So I don't think it should be too surprising. When the Switch came out, it was this perfect blend of Nintendo Portable, like Nintendo DS monster system, and the Nintendo Wii U absolutely floundered in the market, but we were kind of ready for whatever would replace the Nintendo Wii. The Wii U didn't do it, didn't scratch that itch. Nintendo DS still going really, really strong. What if we merged a Nintendo Wii with a Nintendo DS? That's peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time. So that was like the culmination of both portable and home console at a time where we were really hungry for what was going to be coming next, a proper replacement. And it took the world by storm in validating a console quality, not as powerful as like a PlayStation or an Xbox, but a console quality experience you could take on the go or plug into your TV. That was massively hot, right? So now, depending on region, sales of the Switch 2 in its first year have already fallen off from sales of Switch 1 in its first year. What was its first year? In 2017. So eight years later, the Switch 2 is not putting up the same kinds of numbers as the original Switch. That could be concerning. There is the little Schadenfreude, like, oh, see, nerds like me, we're PC gamers, we could have told you, and it's just not as good, and Switch 1, and Nintendo Switch 2, and Steam Deck, and MSI Claw, and Asus ROG Ally. Okay. So now there's just a lot more competition for mobile gaming, right? There are like the little niche emulators and players, like the little retro kinds of handhelds. people love those things. Those have seen kind of a proliferation as, smaller chips have gotten more powerful and better battery life. Then we still live in a world where the Nintendo Switch 1 is being sold, and there's an entire line of different PC portables that people can choose from the Steam Deck to the Lenovo to the Asus to the MSI, Aya Neo, all of those other players, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's just more competition than when the Switch 1 originally launched. I think it could have been pretty easily predicted that the price difference from Switch 1 to Switch 2 would cool some of the first year demand. But what most of these articles don't put up in front, and the reason why I'm linking this Ars Technica article is because I think they're one of the few that is making this as blatant a point as they are, that if you take combined Switch 2 and Switch 1 sales, then Nintendo is still up in total units sold over the original year the Switch 1 launched. They're still selling between 7 and 11% more consoles in total between both generations of console. So their strategy of Switch 1 still exists and most games still come out for Switch 1 makes a lot of sense as the lower cost option. And then if you spend the big money, you can get the more powerful portable. That's a Switch 2. And then you'll be future proofed. But right now, there's not a lot for the Switch 2 that the Switch 1 can't touch. So that to me is kind of the story here. Even in this like tone of defeat. Oh, Nintendo couldn't match the sales of the Switch 1 in that zeitgeist moment where the Switch arrived and blew everyone away, and now everyone has like a portable gaming experience accessible to them. Why couldn't they do that? That's not the story. I think the story is in a crazy challenging market with wild market pressure, price fluctuations like crazy, the instability, we didn't even know if the Switch would be able to hold on to its price, Switch 2 would be able to hold on to its launch price given all of the tariffs and market instability. Year over year, Nintendo has still found a way to sell more consoles in total than that first year that the Switch was at its peak maximum desirability. That to me is an impressive position to be in this market right now. I still have to giggle a little because the Switch 2 arrives as the next like hopefully 8-year console for Nintendo, and it's already less powerful than phones that were released last year. Again, why aren't we paying more attention to ARM gaming? 'Cause you can't even like play games on it, except for all the people that like play COD and Fortnite and PUBG and like Shadowgun and stuff. Because like you can't even like play games on ARM. You can't even like have software on ARM or play games on it. But I'm gonna be sticking with my big gaming purchase is gonna be a Steam frame. I really want to see what emulation can do with Linux and ARM emulation for PC games. I think that's gonna be a pretty big deal. Hopefully, again, sort of lifts up all a rising tide lifts all ships, lifts up some of our Android experiences too. Oh, I just wish the Switch 2 used something more modern. You can tell like Nintendo probably waited out until the last possible instant where Switch was still earning crazy amounts of money just as it was dipping. That's when they kind of got into the market. But to your point, I really feel like Switch 2 was designed as a more immediate response to the Steam Deck. I feel like Nintendo knew they could keep going on Switch, but the hardware feels like, what if we really made a Steam Deck killer? But now they've kind of built it in a way where they're already behind a tablet, a phone, any of these other experiences. And sure, like the premium phone that I would hold up probably costs $300 or $400 more than a Switch 2. But then it would also be a full-fledged phone, computer, data connected device it would do, again, it's like the argument between getting a console just to play games and getting a PC to do your work and play games. That to me is kind of, I'll pay more for the premium phone knowing it can handle all this other stuff too. From Team Vry, I'm totally with you on that one. I've used pretty much the entire Switch lineup, and their strategy towards game launches could be handled a bit better, especially with the Switch versus Switch 2 versions. I remember back in 2011-12 when the 3DS Vita weren't doing too hot and smartphones were just becoming more mainstream, leading to a ton of tech publications to spell the end of dedicated handhelds. The biggest issue I have with smartphone gaming is the lack of long-term support for titles. So many games that I've purchased before aren't available for re-download now. So that is absolutely a concern. It's it's a concern I feel is getting better as developers see they can make more money on games for Android. The problem is money. If we can't if we can't show them they make money, they're not going to bring games to Android. Like it's not a, it doesn't work in the reverse. What if we spend all this money on developers to bring over great ports and make sure they're updated and that all the games are really well polished and they play on a variety of different devices, because we have no idea what kind of chip, RAM, storage is going to be the host for this. So we're going to make all this effort, and then gamers will want to buy games on Android. It doesn't work that way. You've got to go the other way and say, when these things start selling, then we'll put more effort into broadening that experience. That's why I really like the work that Feral does, Feral Interactive, because they don't launch willy-nilly. They whitelist like crazy. They test on a couple Samsung, that expands out to any other phones with like the premium tier chips. If they can't get easily, if they can't get a good gaming experience on another processor, it doesn't go to that phone. Your phone is not whitelisted for that game. Like especially like Grid Legends. Great racing game, love it. It took a while for good support on MediaTek, and I still don't think you can get Grid Legends on a Tensor. So none of the Pixel phones that I know of are playing Grid Legends. Maybe the Pixel 9, but I still don't think they're on Pixel 10. That's the way to do it. You could see Feral is making money, and they're making announcements that they're bringing more games over, especially older sweetheart, darlings like Tomb Raider. Yeah, we're still talking about the 2013 Tomb Raider because it's an awesome game. It looks great, plays awesome, and now it's going to be getting a proper Android release. It's a great last life for a game. If you're a patient gamer, you just want to find you just want to find new for you experiences. Feral Interactive is doing just phenomenal work in bringing that stuff over. Now we've got to celebrate that. We actually have to talk about those as wins in our community. And that will bring other people to say, oh, you know what? I just looked on my tab. There are all these other things that I could play. I think Balatro, Blasphemous, a Dead Cells. There's so many. Subnautica plays really well on mobile. And that is a pretty beefy game. I think people would dig it if they knew that that could be part of the experience. And if we want that game to keep getting patches and updates, we need to show those developers they can make money with our community too. But you're not wrong, Team Vry. I had one. It was this really great side-scrolling shoot 'em up. I can't remember the developer. They completely bounced on Android. The game was called Sector Strike. I loved that game, and then they just vanished. Like there was no way for me to like port it. I couldn't get an APK. The game just like completely died. But then you get this other one too. Like it's one of the best like isometric uh short mission. It's kind of a dungeon crawler, but it's a short mission action third person action game called Implosion. And I've been talking about Implosion since like you know 4 or 5 years. It was one of the first apps that I brought to All About Android when on my first appearances when they would do the app arena. And that game will fall out of support and it will stay out of support for like 2 years. And then just out of nowhere, the developers will do this massive update. And then suddenly we can play Implosion again. And then, you know, we'll play for a couple years, and then phone OS updates will get out of hand, and Implosion will fall out of support. It won't install, and then we'll have to go another year, and then it'll get updated again, and we can play Implosion again. It's kind of funny, like it's not as fluid as PC gaming, but in some ways I do think it could be better than console gaming. If there's not explicit backwards compatibility built into a console for older and newer games to kind of move back and forth, there is potential for Android to end up being better than how consoles handle generations of software. Oh, Team Fry. Yeah. No, you're totally fair there. He says, I'm still salty over Infinity Blade and the original Shadowgun and Call of Duty Strike Team, Dead Space Mobile, Halo Spartan Assault for Windows Phone. I need to try because I don't think, I think Shadowgun still runs. Like if you can get in and load it from your Android account, when you go into Google Play, you can like look through the apps that are still on your account, but they're not listed in the Play Store. I think Shadowgun still plays on most newer phones. But you like what you're saying, Dead Space Mobile, Halo Spartan Assault, just really phenomenal gaming experiences that all kind of vanished. Now I'm playing Spartan Assault on Windows. So like any Windows machine that has a touch screen, I'll still occasionally fire up Spartan Assault and play it there. But it's not the same. It was best, I think. I think you're right. It was best on those Windows phones and Windows tablets. Uh, like especially, I played it so much on that Lumia, the 2520. Just awesome, so much fun. One of the best twin stick shooters of that era. We drink some more coffee. We got two more here, and then I hope I can get into this last breaking news link. Okay, let's screen share this. Just wanted to kind of peek this because I'm not sure who this is right for. And someone please clue me in if this was the phone that you were really stoked for. But I'm a little nonplussed. So this is over at GSM Arena. They actually have a couple of articles out talking about this, but specifically Vlad wrote up more RedMagic 11 Air specs are out. RedMagic makes those awesome gaming phones with built-in active cooling, and they're apparently coming out with an Air. So it's going to have a Snapdragon 8 Elite. So this is the RedMagic 11, but it's an Air version, up to 24 gigs of RAM, a 7,000 milliamp hour battery, and support for 120 watt charging. Um, I still feel like RedMagic needs to shore up some of their longer term support, software updates, etc., etc. But I was kind of interested, like, so this phone is launching with the premium chip from the beginning of 2025. We're already into the next generation of Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5s now in the beginning of 2026. And I don't know who really needed to have a smaller gaming phone. This to me is a very interesting and very specific niche. A gaming phone has triggers, has a bigger battery, the RedMagic has active cooling that adds to the depth of the device near the camera. And you know you're going in with compromises for what a phone is. It's bigger, it's chunkier, it's louder, but you know you're compromising on all the traditional phone stuff because you want just unmatchable performance. To me, it's always wild because, like, what RedMagic does isn't, oh, the phone runs so cool in my hands. It's the phone has active cooling, so we can actually drive all of the internals even hotter. We can push performance even further. And then they were always ahead of the curve on things like power pass through, bypassing the battery, stuff like that. So considering all that, is there someone here in my chat right now who's saying, I love all that, but I really needed like a sleeker, slimmer version of that. Because to me, that feels like we know there's a compromise on software support. We know there's a compromise on camera. The cameras on our gaming phones are always functional, but never great. And it's still going to be kind of lumpy. I'm hoping that this is a phone that isn't getting rid of things like the triggers and stuff. But now you've compromised the gaming performance if it's thinner. I don't know. I'm really struggling to find where I think this phone fits because I can always make an argument for a RedMagic. Always. It is a niche product that is the king of its niche and it will always put down the best performance numbers of its generation. If you tax the phone at all, it's going to crush any other passively cooled phone with similar specs. I mean, like you can't pretend and you can't make excuses. If you want the best performance of that generation, you have to go with active cooling. That's it. So again, I'm really wrestling in my brain. Mountain Dew Lou says nope. I feel like asked and answered a very definitive one word. That's a complete sentence, by the way. NOPE, period. I mean, elaborating, me, not that target audience. I totally appreciate that. But I just really have struggled. So, like, I'm going into 2026 with last generation chip. I mean, the RAM and storage and battery look solid. That's great. But I just don't know who I would recommend that phone to, especially because now the RedMagic 11 and RedMagic 11 Pro, I forget what they call their different versions and variants and stuff. Like we saw some pretty decent sales on them too. So like the prices have already kind of fluctuated and fallen. Like I just don't understand coming out with that newer device now with some older tech, but now we're kind of talking a bit more about design. So and John Gao saying definitely no. So I don't know. If anyone else has thoughts on this, or if I'm just missing something, like what could be kind of cool to do with a gaming phone, please let me know. But I had very specific ideas of what gaming phones should be, and I don't think the idea of an Air gaming phone um, is really doing it for me. Oh, and kind of interesting, Mr. Maug saying, I think a OnePlus 15R would be a better buy over the RedMagic 11 Air. I think a OnePlus 15R, well, I've got my OnePlus 15R right here. This is a great phone. This is an excellent communication, battery life, social media, phone calls, texting, messaging. This thing is insane. The 15R is flipping phenomenal. I've held off on on publishing my performance tests because I'm worried about some of the high-end performance. I'm worried about some of the cooling, especially once we're talking about gaming. And then there are just a couple things that I still think are annoying, like no video out through the USB. If you compared this against the RedMagic from more of a daily driver communicating companion computer device, absolutely 15R all day, every day. If you're considering a device that you might want to play some games on, um, I'm a little hesitant on the 15R in ways that I was more positive on the 13R. But I'll have to share more of my experiences again as soon as this gets just like another big update. There was a January update for my OnePlus 15. It has not arrived for my 15R, and then I need to do all of my testing all over again just to see if those numbers have changed. But right now, I'm a little worried about the price to performance reality. Not just, oh, it's got a newer chip, it's got a good chip. It's how does that chip really perform in the frame that it's built around? And I have to believe a RedMagic would just murk this thing. even if it's a RedMagic 8 Elite versus an 8 Gen 5, I have to believe. All right. I saw someone mention it, and I actually do have a link out here also from GSM Arena. I think this is something we've all been asking for the last 3 years, and it would be nice if it came back. It would be nice if it came to pass. This one was written up by Vlad, also over on GSM Arena. OnePlus 16 Pro or 16 Ultra, now rumored to be on the way. So Vlad seems to have forgotten in this article that it wasn't that long ago. It was the OnePlus 10. The OnePlus 10 had a T variant and a Pro variant, and we've kind of shifted so that there's a number as the top option at OnePlus, and then an R as the more mainstream or mid-priced kind of solution. But it would not be difficult. We have said this for the last 3 or 4 years now. If we could just take Oppo's Find X series and put the cameras on like a Find X Pro, not even the Find X Ultra, just the Find X Pro. If we could put those cameras on a OnePlus, we could call that the OnePlus Plus or the OnePlus Pro or a OnePlus Ultra. It would be nice if, especially here in the United States, we could get, I mean, obviously you'd have like Nords as kind of just the fodder that can occasionally be sold at like carriers or for lower cost, sort of entry level purchasing. But if we had, again, say it's the 16, say it doesn't even arrive until the end of 2026. If we had a 16R, a 16, and a 16 Pro, would be very exciting, because then I wouldn't feel quite so angsty about the premium but not most expensive phone. The OnePlus 15 is such a good device, but it's not a great camera phone. It is a passable, adequate, good enough camera experience. Totally in line with competing against iPhone 17, Merck's the iPhone 17 Air, kind of in the same ballpark, trading blows, pros and cons against a Galaxy S25 Plus. But the whole rest of the phone is incredible high performance, amazing battery life, fast charging. It's such a good phone that if I could just get some Oppo cameras on that mug, I think a lot of us would be a lot happier. In today's market, the reality of that phone, it would continue to get more expensive. We would have to acknowledge it is okay for a OnePlus to be sold at $1,200. For some reason, techies just can't let that go. OnePlus used to be only a half a ham sandwich and a handshake with eye contact. And like, that's what they still think of, like, the brand. So many techies only acknowledge OnePlus as like a purse label. Well, this purse is a budget purse label, so you can't have an expensive purse from a budget purse label. I only buy purses from Samsung and Apple. Only Apple and Samsung purses can be more expensive, ignoring like what the thing can actually do, ignoring the actual performance, ignoring the benefits and how competitive the device really is. But I'd pay it. I would, especially after using the OnePlus Open and what they did with camera tech and a folding phone and how much better the OnePlus Open was than any folding phone in the United States, even the year after the OnePlus Open came out. Because, like, man, Google got all this praise for refining the Pixel Fold, and it still wasn't as good as the OnePlus Open. The OnePlus Open was still murking the second generation Pixel Fold. So, I don't know how to get techies over that hurdle. That, like, it's okay to have a OnePlus that's a more premium product. And if OnePlus were to come out with a Pro, it would probably be more competitive against Samsung Ultras and iPhone Pros than any of the tech influencers would ever care to admit. Instead, they'll go in and say, oh, but I don't like this part of the UI, and who would ever buy a OnePlus that costs this much? And completely glaze over all the ways that that phone would be more competitive, especially if we could open up that price ceiling a little bit and play with some more parts and pieces, really flesh out that overall experience. So yeah, it's not great. Oh, John Gao. Yeah, exactly. John Gao beat me to it. We just need a OnePlus rebrand of the Find X Pro in North America. And then he goes, ha ha ha, high five, Juan. I mean, we've been saying this. I'm not even that unique, right? It's like we've been saying this since the OnePlus 11. If Oppo is the caretaker of OnePlus, let's just get Find X. I'm even cool if they want to bring us the MediaTek flavors. Because let's not pretend that OnePlus is really fronting with Verizon right now, right? So if this phone comes out and they say, hey, this is going to work best on, T-Mobile. It'll work okay if you go through your carrier, get it listed for AT&T, but it might only be kind of the lowest level 5G support for Verizon. I'd be fine with that. I think a lot of people would be cool with that. And I think you would still end up with a better overall, like the experiences I've had with my Vivo here in the United States with the little MediaTek radio in here have been fantastic. I really, to go really cynical, like there's a part of me that says you could just change the label on the outside of the box. I think most people would be like, wow, this phone is awesome. From Kenosha, OnePlus 15R is now pushing $700 US because of them tariffs. And it's probably going to get worse over 2026. It's probably going to get worse before it might get a little bit better. Mr. Maug also saying, I would also be happy if it used the MediaTek chips. The Dimensity 9500 has been an interesting animal, but the updates have polished it up a little bit. I still am a little concerned over like generational performance. I don't know that the Dimensity 9500 really is an upgrade in all parts over the 9400, but the Vivo just did me so well on the CES show floor. So I had my SIM card in here. What's funny? Okay, so I had the OnePlus 15 and the Vivo X300 Pro, and it was funny because every time I would go to like a meetup with other techies and other influencers, it would almost always be a Samsung Apple combo. A Samsung maybe for some of the camera stuff, but then everyone was doing everything on their iPhone. I'm at the Motorola event. I'm sitting in front of a bunch of I'm sitting behind, excuse me. I'm sitting behind a bunch of other influencers and some former Verge staffers, and like all of them are iPhoning. You would see like this token, like, oh, I'm totally using this Samsung trifold, and then they put it in their pocket, and to get their video of the Sphere in Las Vegas, iPhones, iPhone, all iPhone, especially from former Verge reporters. Anyone who's out there pretending like, oh no, I'm an equal and unbiased, they live in iPhone and they occasionally handle Android. And I'm in the middle of one conversation, you're like, okay, so what phones are in your pocket? And I pull out my Xiaomi 15 Ultra, I pull out my Vivo X300 Pro, and I pull out my OnePlus 15. And it's like they're waiting for me to pull out the iPhone. I'm showing them my OnePlus watch, which over 4 days of CES only got down to 40% battery. I did not use it for sleep tracking. I don't sleep track from my watch, but I broke halfway 4 days in smartwatch mode, not in fitness tracker mode, in smartwatch mode. You can miss me with Galaxy smartwatches and Apple watches because I'm quadrupling, more than quadrupling the battery life of their most expensive watches that meagerly add like a half a day of battery life. It is just hilarious to me that we're even pretending. But the Vivo had my personal SIM card in it, was getting great data. So I know I wasn't getting the fastest like T-Mobile UC in many areas, but when you're at the show floor, you're surrounded by humanity. There's just like tons of people hitting their phones, hitting their laptops, hitting their tablets. Like there's just constant traffic. And I didn't feel like I had ever really gotten slowed down. Day one on the show floor, they open up the doors, everyone goes rushing in to go see all the exhibits in the main halls. Like that's the worst it got. And I was still more than capable of checking messages and uploading. I was still able to upload, which was wild to me. Like the infrastructure around Vegas at that time has just gotten so much better than it used to be. The thing that I had the hardest time with, this is the funniest part. I would get back to my hotel and my OnePlus 15 would immediately fire back up on the hotel Wi-Fi. The Vivo would wig out, would connect, but then not sign me back in. Because hotel Wi-Fi, they always like verify that you're a guest at the hotel. You have to put in your name and room number. On the OnePlus 15, I would have to do that every morning, and then the whole day, I could get back on my hotel Wi-Fi. The Vivo would make me re-sign in every single time, but I would have to do it manually. It wouldn't like alert me, and I think this is just a Vivo issue. I don't think this is an Android or a MediaTek issue. That was the sticky spot, was signing back into my hotel Wi-Fi. Other than that, I would go the whole day. I shot all of my video from the Vivo X300 Pro. I did about 3/4 of my editing from the Vivo X300 Pro, and I never made it down past 40% battery in any day I was on the CES show floor. How heavy are you using your device? Are you using it full coverage for a media event every day? Because if you are, that's still a 2-day phone. 2 days. And I could charge it up in like a half hour when I would get back to my hotel room and plug it into a fast charger. Just absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. It was great. I loved it. I loved it so much. Oh, that's a good point. Enrico Vids, do you have randomized MAC address turned on for Wi-Fi? That might force a re-login. I don't know. I will check that out. That is a very good point. I didn't even think to look at that. And Vonnegut Rosewater saying, pour one out for the Tick Watch. I unfortunately didn't get to meet up with the folks at Mobvoi. One of the reps that I've done the most work with, he was at the show, and I walked by the Mobvoi booth and missed him, and really made like a mental note, like I got to come back and try and meet him. It was just one of those events like I just couldn't get back, and that was kind of a bummer. It would have been really cool to meet up. I don't know what Mobvoi's doing. I don't know that they're going to come back with another watch. I think they're going in on AI and memo recorders and other accessories. But if it weren't for the OnePlus watch, I would definitely still be using a Mobvoi, a Tick watch. There's just nothing like that kind of battery life. When you're going multiple days, not like 2 days, when you're going like 4 days and change, and it's still the full featured smart watch. It's not low power mode. Miss me with, oh, my Galaxy Ultra, I can get like 3 whole days if I jump through hoops and I don't use it at all and I turn the screen off and I go low power mode, and then I can get just as good a battery life. And you're like, man, if I did any of that, this watch would last me a month. And it would still be a more full featured experience than the Galaxy Watch Ultra in low power mode. Like, you could just miss me. Google, Apple, Samsung are not giving us their best. They want you burning out those smaller batteries, so you have to replace your accessories sooner and buy more things to keep charging your devices more frequently than you need to. It is not close. And the more you compare against some of these international devices, these international experiences, it's just galling to see how little Apple, Google, and Samsung really think of their customers. Not nerds like me who criticize them. They don't care about me. They know they can keep squeezing the people who just keep buying their stuff out of familiarity and apathy. And they know that the vast majority of those consumers aren't going to shop for any other competing or look up alternative experiences. From Vazikos, Pebble Round 2 seems nice. I'm still waiting for my pebbled time to, I really want that watch. From Chris Pollard, my OnePlus Watch 3 is usually at about 24% after 4 days, but that includes sleep tracking overnight. I can make a full 5 days without disabling anything, but it will go auto battery saver at 19%. And it's what's hilarious is you go to battery saver at 20% of the battery, and that could still be another 4 days of fitness tracker use. It's wild. And fitness tracker uses be like if you had an Amazfit. Yeah, it doesn't have quite all of the same Android integration, mapping, little apps, all that stuff, but it's still a full-fledged watch. Just like that is insane. And people are still like, but I spent way more on my Galaxy Ultra, so it must be better. You're like, no, it's really not. I just you can't. It's funky. All right, let me oh, it finally loaded. Man, this is so weird. And I need to stop like streaming from this desktop, I guess. Yeah, John Gao saying the US Mobvoi website doesn't even list smartwatches. Team Vry saying I'm kind of disappointed that Mobvoi abandoned them. Um, yeah, it's definitely been a bummer. TicWatch never got the kudos they deserved because all of the UI and all of the navigation and all of the improvements to Android Wear that then became Wear OS came from Mobvoi first. My very first generation Mobvoi TicWatch is nearly identical to the layout and experience that we have on Wear OS today. They were the ones who pushed this like lateral side, having little like widgets and applets, vertical for notifications, pull down for your quick toggles, things like that. That came from Mobvoi. So I did want to cover this one real quick. Let me screen share this. So John shared this. Super simple. This is coming directly from the Google blog, the Google keyword. Joint statement from Google and Apple. Apple and Google have entered into a multi-year collaboration under which the next generation of Apple Foundation models will be based on Google's Gemini models and cloud technology. These models will help power future Apple Intelligence features, including a more personalized Siri coming this year. After careful evaluation, Apple determined that Google's AI technology provides the most capable foundation for Apple Foundation models and is excited about the innovative new experiences it will unlock for Apple users. Apple Intelligence will continue to run on Apple devices and private cloud compute while maintaining Apple's industry-leading privacy standards. So, now please understand the bias of your current podcast host, but this to me kind of feels like more evidence that the AI bubble is deflating. You see, if there were a viable business model in running tons of your own data centers and training up tons of your own bespoke models and doing all of your own uh, aggregate coding LLMs for your own foundation, that AI mattered to the experience and it was so critical for the future of your product's experience that it made financial sense to do this. And you could put in that infrastructure, you could spend all that money on data centers and have complete control over your stack, the UI, the operating system, the output from AI, that you knew that you could pay off that investment and it would make a meaningful impact on the sales of your company's products. Wouldn't we expect a company as wealthy as Apple to do that work, make those investments, and then market the heck out of how our solution is the best, it just works, Apple Intelligence? Instead, Apple is looking at what it would take to be competitive against the data centers that are springing up from Google and Microsoft and Amazon and Facebook and Twitter, all these companies that are trying to be the data brokers, and Apple saying it doesn't make sense. It is going to be less expensive and just as beneficial if we license Google's Gemini, even taking a bit of a hit, because the perception would be Apple is kind of giving up information on user interactions to Google again. But considering how much money they've made with Google paying Apple just to be the default search engine, Apple is giving them literally 1/10 as much money back for Google's AI technology. That's how lopsided this relationship is. I really believe at some point Apple was expecting companies to pay Apple to be the default AI. And they kind of got a little glimmer, a little taste of that. They had a deal with OpenAI, running ChatGPT. Oh, we'll let you use ChatGPT for free on the iPhone just for the exposure and access to Apple users. But they never got that deal where a company would pay them to be the default AI. So then they hyped up Apple Intelligence. We're really going to do this. We're going to have AI and Siri's finally going to be smarter. You just see, we're going to knock this out of the park. And then they whiffed on their to the time that they were doing it, their massive AI investments. And now it makes so much more sense for them to license AI from Google at 1/10 the price that they used to set for search, instead of trying to make their own foundation for models and services. I don't know. I can't point to better evidence that AI is a completely unsustainable business model than pointing to this to say Apple isn't gonna do it. Apple, consumer electronics, mega monolithic. We control this entire experience, walled garden, locking everyone out, would be the perfect opportunity to make the claim that their solution is somehow different and better than everyone else doing work in this industry. And they couldn't even market their way through that. They tried to talk about Siri getting smarter. It was obviously total crap. It really wasn't any better. And now, with the opportunity to double down on that, which Apple usually does, they'll lose in the market. Like, look at how much fun people made of the Apple Watch and the iPad, and then they just kept cycling and improving, and then they kind of won people over. And they're not going to do that with AI investments. There is no money for Apple to do this on their own. They're not going to try and fight for more RAM and data centers and NVIDIA compute units and all this other mess. They're not going to try and convince local municipalities and cities that they need more access to water and more access to electricity. They're not going to play this game of we're sucking up all the power in this region and we brought all this green power online just to handle the overload that we were already over consuming from the local grid that we're setting up data centers at. They're just going to funnel this off to Google, pay Google $1 billion a year, and Google's going to act like this is some massive win for AI. But really, to me, this looks like a damning situation for what is the value of a language model on a phone. If Apple can't make money on it, and none of these corporations are profitable with their AI yet, that does not say to me that this is the hot investment trend it's playing out in the market. To me, this is the emperor's got no clothes. And even Apple is now pointing out, yeah, this AI stuff, emperor has no clothes. Bradley Larcher. So Apple actually made a smart move here. Not actually, I mean, like, we shouldn't be surprised. Like, I think the people that are kind of in charge of Apple's business, they make ruthless calculations every day, all day. I feel like they definitely made the correct play here. I don't see, I mentioned this in my CES recap. CES kind of served as the media's marching orders. Excuse me. These massive companies, if it was an Nvidia, if it was an AMD, like Lenovo talking about their solution, Samsung, the first look, all of this stuff out there, really what it turned into was the media has to get in line. Do you want to play ball with Nvidia? Then you've got to understand Nvidia's talking points and be ready to be a mouthpiece for Nvidia's success. Like literally this morning, another article that I didn't include in the show notes was Jensen Huang saying, "Oh, it's just such a bummer that there's so much negative commentary about AI. It's really hurt the market." Yeah, coming from the guy who's making the most money ever selling the pickaxes for the gold rush, right? He's selling all the compute hardware to run the AIs. And NVIDIA obviously has a huge infrastructure for developing models and for like building infrastructure and helping companies grow. They've open sourced a lot of their software. I totally get it. But they're not really selling the AI. They're investing in and selling the infrastructure for the AI. So they're not in the gold rush trying to pick gold out of the ground. They're selling the pickaxes and the tents and the water and the mules and all the infrastructure for the gold rush. And just wouldn't you know it, the company making the most money on the gold rush, not mining any gold, is really upset about all the people who are, saying negative things and are skeptical of the gold rush. If they just ran into the gold rush too and spent a whole bunch of money with Nvidia, then they'd benefit from the gold rush, probably, maybe. I mean, there's no guarantee. You can build up all of this infrastructure and not win at AI. I mean, Apple pulled the plug on their AI initiative, but really it was probably because they just didn't go hard enough. If they just went harder and longer, then they'd probably be fine and they could do the AI. So this was round four. OpenAI sort of blew open this market with language models and then saying that the interactions we could have with language models could have a more distinct revenue generating relationship. That hasn't proven to be true. So from LLMs, we quickly progressed into generative AI. Because what do we really value if someone's not creative and they don't have any respect for the creative process, but they still feel like they're a big ideas kind of person? Generative AI helps them feel like I could be an artist with the right prompt. And that's not how art works. And it really hasn't displaced the work that's being done in the creative endeavors to the same degree that I think a lot of people were trying to make it sound when Gen AI was the big hot talking point. The media got their marching orders. Generative AI, that was going to be the big thing. Then the year after generative AI, it was all about agentic AI. So generative AI didn't really pan out and be as disruptive in the market as we thought it would be. We're getting these cute little AI slop video clips, and you can make a photo that looks photorealistic, and now people are having a hard time figuring out what's real. It's doing huge damage to our ability to report news and share experiences. It's awful, but it's not making money. So now we need something else. We need agentic AI. We need AI helpers that can act on your behalf. And that's really, I mean, it's like now your phone is even more of like your little butler. Your computer can do even more without you having to micromanage every little thing you do. But if you give it any actual authority to do things, it makes terrible decisions and it's gonna mess you up. Like, it's really dumb. It's an episode of Silicon Valley. They employ a little agentic AI and it gets a good deal on hamburger meat. So when they say, hey, I need you to buy the things to do a company barbecue, they end up buying like 3 tons of ground beef. Because it's a really good deal on ground beef. And that's what still, I mean, that was a joke in Silicon Valley, the television show from years ago. and it sadly is proving true. So agentic AI didn't really move the needle. Microsoft Copilot, OpenAI, ChatGPT, all of these like helpful bias confirming AI chatbots, man, people love it. Lots of codependent relationships between people and their AI, but it's not making money. So this year at the show floor, the new trend this year, the hot new talking point and the thing that's going to blow everybody away, physical AI. Physical AI. See, that's where we were getting held back, is because look at all these things like agentic AI. Yeah, but my phone can't fold my laundry for me. My phone can't make me the sandwich after it orders all of the ingredients for that sandwich. We need physical AI. We need robots. We need better autonomous vehicles. We need machinery and warehouse and agriculture, physical AI. And if you notice, like each one of these phases has just been a rebranding of scientific research that was already playing out. I don't remember exactly when I did it. I want to say it was maybe almost 10 years ago now. But I covered one of the DARPA robotics challenges. The DARPA challenges started with the autonomous vehicles driving out in the desert. And then I got to cover one where it was humanoid robots having to navigate through disaster relief. It was after Fukushima. It was shortly after Fukushima, so maybe not quite 10 years ago. That's physical AI. That challenge, universities were making these machines and they had to be able to sort of look through their environment. And they were given some really simple tasks like crawl over this debris, get around this rubble, go up these stairs, turn off this like pipe, turn this handle, and then navigate your way back out again. And the idea, of course, being like if there's a terrible catastrophe like a Fukushima, one, we want to avoid sending in people, and two, we might not be able to count on wireless communication or infrastructure. So, can we build a robot that can decently navigate some very simple tasks and come back out again? That was years ago. And the robots that we were seeing at CES were definitely more advanced, like especially the designs, motors, the servos, the build, like all of that is better. Hands down. Absolutely. The machining is actually really impressive. I got to wear an exoskeleton at the show floor, not to make my legs stronger, but to protect my back. Do you know like the infrastructure to make an intelligent exoskeleton to support my spine was wild. And it was a really crazy experience. I reached down, I pick up this really heavy box that they've got, and it wasn't that the box wasn't heavy, it's that like I didn't feel like my legs or my spine compress in a weird way. That to me is an excellent example of motors and machine learning working to make a human more effective in a job. But like I'm looking at some of these little robots and oh no, it walked onto a different kind of carpet and it just falls over. It's trying to dance and then it slips. I was in one part of the hall where I was getting this little like talk, and the robot is supposed to be able to recognize people, but it's so swarmed, it's so packed on the show floor. The robot starts walking towards me and three people jump in the way because I don't think it recognized me. And if that thing had fallen on me, it would probably have hurt me. It's a giant motorized battery powered appliance. So yes, from where we were back when I was covering the DARPA challenge, our ability to put in more compute power for the batteries has wildly improved. So yes, all of these machines would be more capable than what I covered years ago. Probably be able to do all of these tasks a lot faster. Maybe not necessarily better, but definitely compute their way through those tasks faster just based on our ability to process information. The sensors have gotten better, the cameras have gotten a lot better. That makes perfect sense. But don't you see how that's just the natural evolution of the research we were already doing? But we've got to hype people up on AI so investors keep putting more money into this stock market, and these companies can keep investing in each other so they never have to have a viable consumer business model. You can just move billions of dollars from Nvidia to OpenAI, and OpenAI can move billions of dollars to Cisco or to any other infrastructure company, and then they can take billions of dollars and pour it into Google, and then Google can take billions of dollars and put it into something else. It's just a shell game with like 10 to 20 billions of dollars that they just keep kind of purposing in different directions. So you keep getting the headlines that these companies are making big moves, big investments. And that gets shareholders excited. Oh, I got to buy some more Nvidia stock. Okay, cool. But the work that we're talking about, this is physical AI. Physical AI is robots, and robots are going to do things for you. Like seeing a demo of a robot make a sandwich, and it only got the sandwich wrong like 3 times. When it finally got the sandwich right, it only took like 30 or 40 minutes to really build it. And you're like, okay, cool. I don't think that's coming for. Yeah, imagine you go to a deli in New York and you order a sandwich, and they're like, well, we got this exciting new robot. And you're like, cool, let me see the robot make my sandwich. And then it like very slowly picks up a piece of bread. And how many New Yorkers are going to sit around and go, yeah, that's what I want to spend my money on and sit here and wait? That's a great idea. You make me that sandwich, and I'm going to be late for my train like 3 times over. Or are most New Yorkers going to like, I'm going to cut that? You mm, get a human and make me the sandwich, because I know some dude with a serrated knife is going to slice a bagel, toast it, put together, just like a pound of deli meat and serve it to me before that robot has put down 2 slices of bread. So, it's pretty great. That to me is kind of the wrap up on AI. Was so much talking about infrastructure. The Nvidia keynote I thought was kind of ghastly, because we're at the Consumer Electronics Show and Jensen Huang is talking about a post-consumer market. Nvidia's ability to make more money on their products has nothing to do with the quaint idea of making a product and selling it to an individual and making a profit on that. They know that they can reduce reduce production of their consumer GPUs. The prices of those GPUs are going to skyrocket. They'll make more money on the enthusiast sector for the people that are just desperate to buy anything that's kind of gaming related. And then they can quietly atrophy that market, because eventually you'll just want to do game streaming. And then you'll just have a permanent subscription to play the games you buy through data centers. You'll own nothing, and you'll be happy to make sure you always do business with Nvidia for your subscription to use your hardware. So all of the big articles and all the big headlines were this mass media reaction to talking points. These are the talking points we're coming out with. Um, this is the talking point that matters for Nvidia. This is the talking point that matters for Microsoft. And it's just really disappointing, because when you were on the show floor, I was playing with cameras and gimbals. There were a lot of drones because of DJI having some political issues. Phones and tablets were actually pretty hot on this year's show floor. Laptops were very well represented. And I loved like sitting in on, again, I have to send a thank you and shout out whoever, if you think I've been compromised because I like talking about Qualcomm here. But even Qualcomm was very aggressive in the improvements to local compute power. So, like the NPU on the Snapdragon X2 getting more powerful, they were showing all these edge uses, which is such a stupid industry jargony way of saying AI that works on the computer in your home and isn't sending information back up to a data center, that's our edge use case. That's our edge AI. But that's the stuff that you can really do things with no matter where you are, no matter what you're connected to, or even if you just like would like to kind of rein in privacy and security. So we had someone from Microsoft come out and start talking about like, well, it's really going to be the future is going to be hybrid. And you can keep making this play for the massive data centers to operate the language models. But I don't think that's the future. I don't think that's really going to be the sustainable business model. And from when I see like Apple making this joint announcement with Google, I think we're already seeing the presentation of AI for 2026 rapidly expiring. What makes people excited to spend money on products and what makes investors excited to pour money into companies, I don't know that physical AI is really the hook that people think it will be. And I think unfortunately we're in that phase now where people are going to remember, but wasn't it supposed to be agentic AI? And wasn't it supposed to be generative AI? And Jensen Huang went out on the CES show floor and said, well, really the problem, if you have problems with AI, it's that you're not using enough AI. So acquiring information, that's like an AI. And then you give it a prompt, and that's interacting with one part of an AI. And then you get a result from your AI, and you need to verify that AI. So you need another AI to fact check your AI. And then we want to do physical AI. So we get the response and we verify it. And now we need to feed that into a mechanical AI. So we can operate on the information that you've been giving us and the prompt that we replied to. And then we need to validate the physical interaction with the robot. So then we need like a cross-checking AI for the physical world that can make sure the robots are doing what we tell them to do. So it's not just, oh, I've got like a little language model. The problem is you don't have 6 AI systems cross-verifying and analyzing data and working on information. You need more AI. There's your problem. A massive increase in compute power, and like we literally don't have the raw material on the planet to build, to power, to fuel any of the things that they're talking about. There a couple weeks ago mentioned like the head of AI at Google saying, well, what we need over the next 5 years is 1,000 times more compute performance than what we currently have in data centers. And like, there's no way to 1,000x the data centers that Google employs. That's just make believe. It's a magical. It's investor bait. And again, Apple out here saying the emperor has no clothes. Dell trying to really figure out like AI PC and what are customers really reacting to, and it's not Copilot. And just another refreshing little like, yeah, another one. Emperor's got no clothes here. I mean, people actually really do dig these systems when they use them, but they're not using them because AI. So from Ripso404, the problem with this argument is that AI is never going away. It's the future no matter what. The real question is how long do we have left? So the retort to your comment there isn't that I'm saying AI is going away. If you've been following my channel for any length of time, you would appreciate that I've been very excited about what we can do with local compute, and that machine learning has been a valuable tool for a number of interactions that you have regularly. Um, I always take it back to the Huawei, it was like the Mate 9. It was like the P series also did this too. But the sort of early generations of Kirin chips. One of the reasons why Huawei went off and started making their own chips is because they valued this machine learning component that they could stick on their chip. And it brought these incredible capabilities to the camera where the camera could roughly understand what it was being pointed at. You would point the camera at a landscape and you'd see a little mountain icon on the phone. You point it at a pet, see like a little cat head. You'd point it at food, there'd be like a little slice of cake. it not really, it didn't understand anything, but it had these models built into it where it could figure out, oh, trying to take a picture of food. If you're in full auto, we'll take a food mode photo for you. That's being rebranded as AI. But back then we were calling it ML, machine learning. So all of these little gizmos and gadgets and gigas, things like better subject detection, is a natural evolution of the machine learning tools that we've been playing with in the consumer space since those early Kirin, premium tier Kirin chips. Like I fire up Affinity and I can very quickly scan a photo and I can select any part of that photo, and the sort of cutout is pretty good. It can find like the borders on a subject or eliminate a background. It's very good. That's not a radical departure from the machine learning that we had in smartphone cameras. That's the natural evolution after 7 years of that research to get you to a point where on a laptop you can just go click, click. It finds all of the little borders and areas, and you can kind of select all that stuff out. This is what I'm talking about. Like, if you want to interact with a chat bot, you can install a really large parameter model and run it locally. What's the one that I've got on my laptop right now? I just fired up another one. Um, oh, I don't think I have. So LM Studio is one of them. I also have, is it any, where is it? The icon is like on it. So GPT for all, and then anything LLM. And you can run these things locally on laptop compute power and have some surprisingly robust conversations with a little chatbot. It's a tiny bit slower than if you're hooked up to some kind of mainframe. So it's not AI is going to go away. What I'm pretty confident is going to happen as this bubble either deflates or this bubble bursts is the radical investment that corporations are making to data center based cloud solutions is what we're in danger of seeing tank the entire economy worse than the 2008 housing crisis. If we can't find a slow deflate for this unused or poorly used compute power, and we can't acknowledge that the data centers we build today aren't easily retrofittable and useful for other future endeavors. We've got racks of compute server equipment that after 2 to 3 years is not viable in this workspace anymore. Like, you just create mountains of this data center e-waste because you've got to cycle up, because you got to keep up with all those other AIs out there. You gotta make sure you don't get lapped by China. So we got to keep cycling through all that hardware. As soon as you build the data center, you got to go back to the first racks that you installed and start retrofitting in newer stuff. And then that equipment doesn't really have a second life. It's not like universities are going to be like, oh, I know, we'll build a giant massive building and use 3-year-old data center hardware. That's not really viable. So you end up just chucking this stuff. That's what is completely unsustainable and will cause this cratering. But if we're continuing to focus on the natural evolution of local compute, NPU power, machine learning, efficient software, good coding, this stuff keeps building, keeps getting more interesting. You can also check out, if you want to see what a phone NPU can do. And again, it's not going to be as impressive as like the kind of magic data center experience you have when you interact with a cloud AI. But Pocket Pal, you can run models from that too, and it's interesting. It's pretty cool. But it's not a question of like, well, can we get people to care? It's a question of like literal sustainability. It's a question of this craters in a way that decimates, not, oh no, this gets a little more expensive, or oh gosh, my iPhone's going to get a price hike or something like that. This has the potential to be cataclysmic for the market that has been largely bolstered and largely inflated on these promises that have never been verifiable. There's no business model to get to the promises of like a Sam Altman going out there and saying like, oh, so everyone can have their own AI and you can have an AI startup and everyone can be a small business and I could do with just one person and an AI and I could like replace a whole company and that's all been a lie. But people who control the investments at the highest level of these corporations love that lie because eventually it means that they hope they can replace human labor with cheaper alternatives. But when does it get cheaper? Because right now, if you were to try and just leverage multiple machine learning compute language model systems to replace one human, I don't think that you would end up paying much less, and you would still need people to verify the work of the AI. So you end up just spending more for a lower quality of work and for humans to verify that work. So I'm sorry, I know I'm way off and rambling and stuff like that, but it's not, I don't know. The last anecdote that I want to leave off with is definitely in keeping with that theme. And I'm not trying to pick on you, Ripso, but like I'm at this little show within a show. I'm at Showstoppers and I'm playing around with the exoskeleton. And before I got to try on the exoskeleton, there was this other gentleman talking to the PR rep at the booth for the exoskeleton, Suit X. And just in the most, I don't think he was trying to be antagonistic. I'm really trying to put like some positive intention on this gentleman. But it's still with this unearned confidence and this ignorance of what he's talking about. He's going up to this rep and this guy's trying to sell people on the idea of an exoskeleton that can reduce injuries for laborers, people doing really hard labor in construction, in warehouses, in inventory. I mean, also benefits for other things too, like maybe a first responder. You know, you got to lift a body out of a dangerous environment. Maybe this kind of thing could help. And I'm listening to this gentleman talk to the PR rep just like, well, I mean, like, but this is kind of like a dead market, right? There's like no point in this product after a couple years, right? I'm on the show floor and I'm seeing all these companies showing off robots, and aren't robots going to make this kind of product like totally obsolete? I couldn't help but like chime in and just be like, yeah, I saw a robot make a sandwich and it only took it like 30 minutes to make a bread, lettuce, and tomato sandwich. So I don't know. I mean, like humans are definitely on their way out. And of course, the response from someone who's like, I guess, drinking the AI flavor aid is, well, I mean, but that's a special case, and you know, like a robot can be trained, and so a robot will make a sandwich faster every year that you train it to make that sandwich, and eventually you'll make sandwiches so fast that no human could keep up, which hasn't proven to be true. There is no automated system that has ever made food faster, better, more consistently than humans. Because if there were, you know, McDonald's would have deployed that immediately. You know that Subway would be like, peace out. We got the sandwich robots, y'all. And again, well, but I mean, just we haven't given it enough time and we haven't let them train up enough sandwiches. We need to just keep, but we're making business decisions on these open ended promises. And so I start kind of pushing back. Like his big argument was we as humans are not as special as we think we are, right? I think we're very easily conditioned. I think we're very susceptible to marketing and to media. Like we have this problem in our primate brains where if you just make someone look bigger, we somehow imbue that with an authority that's completely undeserved. Totally appreciate all those arguments. I think we are patterns and algorithms, and we're not that hard to figure out. But we also interact organically with nature in a way that no compute system can really mimic yet. Will we get there? Probably. At some point, there will be a crossing, a tipping point in compute density, portable performance, acquisition, software development, that a robot might be able to find itself in a novel situation that it has never seen before and figure out better solutions than a human. Maybe. I mean, probably in my lifetime, sure. But that's the big issue, is for everyone who sits there and says, oh, humans aren't as special as they think they are, vastly underestimating how complicated it is to train a computer system on nature. The whole natural world is a coding, software acquisition, data collection problem of insurmountable levels. Because again, you take a fully grown human and you move them from an environment they're familiar with to an environment they're not, and they don't completely shut down. Our robots are being trained in hyper specific situations, and the tiniest difference, like a robot walking from shorter carpet to thicker carpet, game over. Literally watched that happen at the show floor. A robot couldn't navigate the changes in carpet from the edge of the booth to the main carpet of the hall. Hadn't been trained on it. Engineers didn't anticipate that that was going to be a problem for the robot walking around CES. Game over. So I'm listening to this guy and he's like, oh yeah, but I mean like first responders and factories and warehouses, I mean these jobs are going to be obsolete. And so your exoskeleton, I mean, don't you see, like it only has like a year or two left. Like robots were going to replace everybody meaningfully. Not just a company wanted to replace factory workers with robots and they tried it and it sucked, but that like it would actually work in a way that would displace all of these jobs and be cheaper than employing humans. That's the other thing too, is like a robot standing on its own is consuming a significant amount of power just standing upright. For a lot of these demos, as soon as the robot was done with the demo, they would have to hang it on a hook so all of the servos and motors could disable and they could charge up the batteries again. Like a human standing is at one of its lowest energy uses. A robot standing is still at a fairly high level of energy use. But again, I'm getting too deep in the weeds here. And I'm just commenting, like any improvement that we make to robots is also going to improve things like the exoskeletons. Like imagine the actual frame of a robotic apparatus. Instead of just a couple motors and servos for like my elbows and knees and hips, imagine like the whole frame of that robot around me as a co-pilot, and the human gets even better. The human gets even more effective and even more productive and is still cheaper than putting in the entire compute brain and assembly of a robot to try and replace a human in a factory, or especially in a first responder situation. Because like, how do you train a robot to run into a burning building? I mean, that's a challenge we're going to have to examine. The Fukushima challenge from DARPA was a challenge we need to examine. We need to find ways of making these situations safer for people. But how do you do it? According to NVIDIA, what you need to do is synthesize all of the data of the world. When Jensen Huang has little robot droids dancing on stage, he talks about birthing them. Those droids were birthed out of NVIDIA synthetic AI data training. We can model the characteristics of real life and use that synthetic data generated by AI to train an AI that can then operate a robot AI. We just need a magnitude more compute power to synthesize real life, to build and birth the next generation of little cute Wall-E style droids. They're so cute, they can dance around on stage. He tried to interact with them and it totally didn't work. But they're so adorable. We should definitely give NVIDIA billions more dollars. So again, I couldn't help myself. I'm talking to this guy, and the guy at the press at the booth for this exoskeleton is just watching us like we're playing the angriest game of ping pong. And as soon as you mention something like, well, okay, but where do we get the data to train a robot to run into a burning building? Like vacant eyes, and then he would go to a completely different topic. Like, okay, but then how do we improve this kind of scenario, or how do we do that with the energy usage, or why can't we acknowledge this has been going on for the last 10 years? Oh, but you see that's different because like laptops have AIs in them now too. That had nothing to do with what we were talking about. Beautiful, beautiful. So um sorry, I know I have comments in here and stuff. From Kenosha, has anyone seen those stir fry food machines? Not quite a robot, but Juan got me about. But Juan talking about food assembly got me thinking about it. Future, it's here. Yes, they are working on physical AI next. Physical AI was the buzz of CES. It was making AI corporeal in the natural world, and that doesn't mean anything. It's the same research and development that has been going on in robotics for the last 10 years. Like Boston Dynamics, I've got my little next. Oh, and I've got my firsts. So like the first team right here. See, he's a little robot guy. I got to see this team's robots in action. Like I want to say it was almost 10 years ago now. So I don't think there's any magic there. I just think it's going to be watching an industry implode because we can't keep sustaining this kind of growth in a market with no actual profits to show for it. So, future, it's here. I disagree. Oppo in general uses robots to produce their phones. I don't know what their current assembly line looks like, but the robot use for Oppo was very minimal the last time I did a manufacturing tour. So that would have been, I want to say, around the time of the OnePlus 6. So totally fair. I mean, that was like 6 years ago. But there's a reason why in every area that's still doing a lot of component assembly, that there are still way more humans on an assembly line than robots. So as much as we can make something as single task as possible in an assembly line, even our automobile manufacturing, while it's certainly been bolstered and augmented by automation and robots, there's still a humongous number of humans involved in the process. So every time we get better at making like one specific action, we can train it. Like we train the robot to do this one specific action, and we make sure it's repeatable and verifiable. And then a tiny issue happens somewhere in the production line, and what do? We have to turn to humans. So I'll look it up though. I don't think Oppo's manufacturing is nearly as automated as what you're making it sound like there. I don't think it's a situation where a robot builds a phone. I think parts of the phone are assembled by robots. And you know what? What they were using a lot was also in the last stages of verification. So like you get the phone assembled and then you've got to do tests on the screen, tests on the cameras. You've got to do those like last stage, just like verifications that there's a functional product there. And that was automated, was more automated, but that was already when the phone was assembled. So now I got to look up if there's been a more recent like factory tour at one of these assembly facilities. I'd be really interested to say, I'm really interested to see like what that looks like. And rip so I'm not saying like that wouldn't be nice, but what do we do with all of those employees and warehouse workers and laborers? Ripso said I will never work in a factory again. It's hell, and I hope robots take all those jobs. I worked at Amazon warehouse once, and it was the single worst experience of my life. And I feel like If we had better unions and better support for the humans working in those warehouses and facilities, like maybe that job would still be strenuous, but wouldn't be as terrible as the soul crushing experience of working for Amazon. Because I've never heard any positive experiences from anyone working at Amazon outside of like the PR, media, content side. Everyone, the drivers, the warehouse operators, everything, even the mid managers, all talk about Amazon like it's a hellish experience. And I just can't help thinking that, if Amazon were a union shop, probably be run a bit better for the people employed there. I totally bet Amazon will be tip of the spear on trying to replace humans in their warehouses as much as they can. Considering how I don't do any shopping at Amazon now, if I can help it. I've purchased almost nothing from Amazon last year as I did like 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. Uh, I'd be kind of curious to see how they handle like the number of orders that just seem to get wrong. When humans are getting it wrong, and like it's because like this barcode, the stories like someone on Reddit, like I ordered one SSD and I got a whole box of SSDs, and it's all because of like an issue with the barcode, right? A human could maybe reason their way through that situation. A robot's going to go, well, that's the barcode. So anyway, I have to wrap this up because my voice is failing. Fat Produce, hey, I'm happy I work for the United States Postal Service and have a union. That's better than FedEx, at least. It is, Andrew. It is. I love the post office. You guys are awesome. Um, I'm glad to be back. It was really fun getting to catch CES. I'm super happy to be home again. Lots of stuff coming to the channel. The nerdiest thing that I saw at CES, I still haven't been able to talk about yet. I've got a mini PC here, I'm a little concerned about. I've got a shell. I got the new Next Dock. I've got phones. I really want to do a follow-up on the Poco M's just because it's been so fun kind of seeing the differences between an M and an M Pro. There's a lot of stuff happening. I'm busy. 2026 is already. We're almost 2 weeks into 2026 and I'm getting rocked. So, stay tuned. There will be more to come. I got to get out of this podcast. Hey folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much everybody, and I know like lots of people here that were in the chat. Also like leaving comments and catching my shorts and watching some of the stuff that I was doing from CES. Really appreciated that chatter. It was really fun getting to interact with people as I was like literally seeing stuff on the show floor. So, folks, I want you all to have an amazing week. I want you to do awesome with your technology. I want you to be awesome with your technology. And I will catch you all back here next week for another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. Be safe. Take care. I love you all. And I'll catch you back.